Hey guys, welcome to the Credit Shifu Show, and we have a special guest today,
Hello.
Sebastian from Ask Sebby. Welcome to New York, man.
Thanks for the good welcome.
Yeah, and we're actually in your hotel room now, and we're going to be showing you guys around the city a bit later. But first, we had this idea to do a video, 5 things you should not purchase with your credit card. So the first category is utility bills, rent, and taxes, or anything that's going to charge you a fee to use a credit card for. So often utility bills, like your electricity bill, etc., they'll charge you like a 3% fee to pay with your credit card. So even if you're getting rewards like like 2% cash back, or even if it was 3%, well, it cancels out all the rewards you're getting and probably actually ends up costing you money, because on utilities, most cards, they're just giving you back like 1% or something.
Exactly, and most cards are probably getting 1 to 2% back, so it doesn't really make sense except for sign-up bonuses, where the return on spend can kind of be between 10 to maybe even 50%. So it makes sense because, again, you're getting 10% back, but you're only paying 3%, so you're kind of like arbitraging 7%.
That's right. So if you need to make a big purchase to push you over the that threshold to get your sign-up bonus, like spending $3,000 in 3 months or something like that.
Exactly.
And you're going to get 50,000 points from that.
Exactly. And a free trip.
Yeah. And say you, so if you spend like 3% on $1,000, that's $30. You have to spend $30 to get 50,000 points, $500 in value. That would be one example.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer. But in general, we advise you not to use your credit card for things like utility bills that are going to charge you a small percentage fee. Okay, next up, recurring payments. And so this is really things like, could be your phone bill, it could be like Easy Pass, which is one of those things that you put in your car. On the East Coast, we have it for bridges and tunnels and stuff when you go through tolls. Depending on how much you use it, it'll randomly take money from your account to refill itself. And depending on your usage, that amount will go up or down.
Oh, wow.
So right now it refills for me about $35, but in times when I've used it a lot, going back and forth to New York, it refills at like $75 a time.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. So if you had a card, like if you're kind of early on your credit card journey and you've got quite low limit cards, like $500 or $1,000, getting a $75 charge you're not expecting could actually put you over your credit limit.
And then you're going to get charged for that too because of the overage. And that doesn't work out. Yeah. A bad surprise.
Yeah. So I would advise you not to put recurring payments, especially ones that have different charges each month on your card, because you don't want charges that you don't know about on there.
Yeah, I've had a few friends too. There are a few friends I know who don't really believe in credit cards, and they kind of don't like to pay down their cards as much as they should, in my opinion, and they end up going over $500 because of these surprise charges. Okay. Or like they end up having a lot of recurring things like, oh, I meant to cancel it, but I kind of forgot about it. And I think credit cards just make it easy to not cancel things, which isn't really good.
And even if you don't go over your limit, you could be trying to keep to like less than 30% utilization to like maintain your credit score. So it could push you over that, and then you kind of ruin your credit score for that month by
which
not
doesn't
a huge
make
amount,
sense,
but it doesn't really make sense. Next up, other loans, in particular mortgages and car loans. So I think it's probably obvious why you shouldn't put these on your credit card, but we'll just go over it anyway. That's because basically, if you have a mortgage, you're actually paying interest on that mortgage. So if you use your credit card to pay it, and most mortgage companies won't let you use a card, so you might, if you want to do that, you might have to get a cash advance and use cash, which then you end up paying even more, right?
Exactly, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you end up more from the cash advance, but you're paying double interest. So if you're paying, say, 5% interest on your mortgage, and then your credit card is like 20% APR, you end up paying 25%, and then on top of that, you got a cash advance fee and an extra like 3% for the cash advance interest. It's
not a fun time.
It's not a fun time. So like a lot of mortgage companies, if you're going to miss a payment, they will often have like a kind of relief scheme that you can phone them up and you can kind of negotiate and ask them if they can delay a payment or that kind of stuff. It's much better off exploring those kind of avenues rather than just resorting to putting it on a credit card and paying like 28%.
Yeah, definitely.
Next up, cheaply financeable items. So this one is kind of like, it's very obvious, but a lot of people might not have thought of it. So let's say you want to buy a brand new iMac. Now the Apple Store does actually have like payment plans for those items, for computers, and their interest rate is far lower than you would get on a credit card.
Oh, really?
And yeah, definitely. And sometimes they'll even give you interest free for a certain number of months. Or like they do it a lot with like sofas, couches and stuff, like interest-free credit for a certain number, certain amount of time, and then they'll start charging interest. But it's definitely going to be a better deal than you'd get on a credit card, which is like, typically say 16 to 24%,
Yeah.
somewhere in that bracket, let's say 20% on average APR. So if there is, and actually I advise, always pay cash for, don't buy stuff unless you have the money. I wouldn't recommend, only for maybe property and real estate and cars, it's kind of, you take out a loan for those, but my personal feeling is other big items. What do you think about it?
The one exception I do think is if you are buying an iMac, if you are a designer or someone who needs that computer in order to make money, then I think it makes sense, especially if you're getting some deferral. But if it's sort of like, hey, I want to be a designer, so let me buy this $3,000 MacBook or something, that's probably a bad idea. So again, I've known people who are like, hey, I want to be a professional photographer, let me buy this $5,000 kit with lens and body and everything. And they're like, okay, never mind, I don't like this anymore. That's a terrible idea. But if you are already a professional photographer and you need it for...
You can factor that into your work expenses, can't you?
Exactly.
So yeah, in general, I don't recommend buying stuff on credit. But if you really need to, look at the financing options from that store rather than just resorting to putting it on your credit card and getting a much higher interest rate on your credit card. And our final item is impulse buys. So this isn't really because of reasons like interest rates or whatever. This is just because in general, I don't advise people to make impulse buys, things they don't need.
And I think it's actually what gets in when people think credit cards is evil, this is typically what happens. They see a cool handbag or they see a cool tech toy, they're like, hey, let me buy it. Even though I don't have that money in my bank account, I have a credit card. It has a $10,000 limit. So some people treat their credit card like money they have versus money that they need to owe, and this gets them into a lot of trouble.
Yes, it really does. So I would advise, only buy things you need or buy things that
generate revenue.
Exactly. Have the money for it. If you already have the money for it, buy it on your credit card, and then you can pay your credit card back before the bill comes.
Exactly.
But if you're just strolling down the street and you see something in a shop window that you really like the look of, and you think, oh, I gotta get it, I would advise against that because you're going to be building up a lot of charges. What's the worst impulse buy you've ever made?
Probably an Oculus Rift. So I think I bought it. I liked it because it was really fun, but then as someone who has glasses, it's such a pain to play with the Oculus Rift. So I do play video games and I do other stuff like that, but it's just such a hassle because I have to put on my contacts, so I don't really end up using it as much. So it's a fun system. I use it, but it's not used as much as it could be used. What about you?
Well, I've had a couple of impulse buys. My first one was a computer, although this was before I had credit cards, so I actually had the money for it. But it just wasn't powerful enough. I didn't do my research, so I ended up selling it for like half the price I bought it for, and buying a Mac instead. And then I bought the GoPro Karma, but there were a lot of...
Did it fall out of the air?
Well, I didn't get it. I didn't ever get it because they started falling out of the sky, and so they just returned my money. And that was on a credit card, but I had the money to pay it off. So I impulse bought that, but then, so before the problems had happened, I started wishing I'd bought the DJI Mavic, and then because they started falling out of the sky and they got cancelled, they returned my money, and I went straight away and bought the DJI Mavic. So it's not really because I paid interest on it, but just in general, impulse buying isn't good, and always do your research on an item before you buy it, because it might not be the thing you really want, and make sure you have the money to pay off your credit card, so that you can actually afford it and you're not going to pay interest. So if you guys want to see a video about 5 things you should purchase with your credit card, you can hop over to Ask Sebby's channel. We're going to put the link on screen in just a moment and in the description of this video. He's also got an awesome channel, loads of cool information about credit cards and stuff on there. I think you delve a little bit more into the statistics than I do.
Yeah, a bit more number driven. I'm basically a nerd. So think about me as a nerd you're using for reference for credit card stuff.
Well, anyway, his channel's awesome, so do check it out, and thanks very much for
making
having this video. Oh, yeah, well, you're having
I
me.
guess
It's your room.
This hotel, that's true.
Okay, guys, see you next time.